We are doing our Friday political panel, a special one for you today as well. Cut-off communities between Napier and Wairoa will have to wait up to 2 months for a Bailey Bridge to connect the crucial Waikari River link. 3 new temporary bridges will replace ones at Hikuai, at Risington and at Portorino. Joining us this morning for our panel, Labour Minister Michael Wood and National MP Judith Collins. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning. First of all, nice to see you, Judith. I feel like it's been a wee while since we've seen you in here.
Oh, we should ask me more often. Always happy to talk about tech.
Yes. Well, there's a lot to get through today, so we'll crack into it. Minister, I'll start with you on the wait. You know, there's farmers in there who have got lambs. I think one farmer said 1,000 lambs that they're ready to go. They want to get them out, but they can't. 2 months is a long time to wait, isn't it?
Yeah, I was down in Hawke's Bay yesterday. We've confirmed the Bailey bridges which are going ahead, which are going to be installed at some of those key locations in the coming weeks. The teams down there are working genuinely as fast as they can to get these in place. They have quite different conditions at each location, but they're getting out there and they're getting the job done. In some of those cases where it might take a bit longer to get a bridge restored, we'll look at other options for trying to get access in, such as working around private land, creating temporary access ways. We know that both for communities and animal welfare there are those pressing needs. And we will pull every lever. We've put the $250 million in there to make sure that we can restore access as soon as possible. But in some cases, the damage is extremely severe, and it does just take a bit of working through.
Judith, what's your view on that? In Northland, for example, the Mayor was saying they're losing $1 million a day in revenue because of the state of the roads.
Well, there's $30 billion on that silly light rail project of Michael's that could go into sorting that out. Look, Bailey bridges should take 24 hours to put up, so I'm sort of surprised that it's taking so long. I mean, after all, New Zealand engineers put them all the way up Italy during World War II. My father was one of them, so I can tell you that. And I think one of the problems we've got is that farmers can't wait 2 months. So it's good that something's happening, but I'm just a bit surprised it's taking so long.
I think there are a lot of other issues that prevent them putting the Bailey bridges up quickly, right? Like potentially more floods coming down the rivers, and you've got to be worried about that kind of stuff.
There are a whole range of issues. Sometimes you can say, OK, we can put a Bailey bridge up or another kind of more permanent bridge repair, but there might be issues in the lead up to that road. There might be issues with the footing. There might be issues with the piers. Depends on the length of the Bailey bridge. I mean, I talked to the people who do this work yesterday. I went to their depot to get an understanding of what's involved. These guys are professionals. They are dedicated and focused around the erection of Bailey bridges. They really do know what they're doing, and they are passionately committed, they're locals as well, to getting them in place as quickly as they can. And so I have real confidence that's happening.
All right.
But it is tough for those communities. We acknowledge that.
It is, absolutely. All right, let's move on. Talk about the school strike for climate today that's happening. Judith, you'll be pleased to know they're waiting until 3 p.m. after school before
I think that's a good idea. So, as we know, about 45% of kids, school-age kids, turn up to school these days. So we don't want anyone leaving school before they have to. So 3 o'clock, fine.
They've got a few demands, and I wanted to put them to both of you. Judith, they want 5 demands. I'll go through 3 of them. One is to lower the voting age.
No.
No. What about no new fossil fuel mining or exploration?
No.
OK, what about subsidising e-bikes?
No, I don't think so. I think at the moment, being able to, the country is actually in a very difficult cost of living situation. The last thing we should be doing is taking taxpayer money, more taxpayer money, when we've got people who can't currently pay their food bills.
All right, because I guess you can also get a non-e-bike, just a regular bike.
Normal bike.
All right, so what about you lower the voting age, Michael?
That's something Cabinet's going to be considering in the next little while, so we'll be working through that. We've always had the view that if the voting age was to be lowered, that would be really significant, and there would probably need to be a process of the New Zealand public having their say on that.
So a referendum on the voting age?
Well, it would be really... In the past, we've had changes to the voting age. That's tended to be what's happened.
Do you think we're likely to see that at this election?
Oh, look,
Could we move that quickly to get
I think it would be very tough.
Can you please put it in this election so that everyone can vote against it?
I think that would be very difficult given the time frames.
Go on.
The other issue I'm really conscious of at the moment, yes, there are important issues to work through like this one, and there's been a legal process. It means that we do need to respond.
But it sounds like
we've also got a big focus on the cyclone recovery at the moment.
Totally.
Some of these things that we just might need to take a little bit more time to work.
So the message to those young people who we've had on the show this morning is that you would see the response to this to be a referendum on the voting age.
Well, look, I think for any big change to your voting system, you generally need to talk to the people.
Sounds like it's happening. No new fossil fuel mining or exploration.
Well, we've started the work in this area. You might remember we stopped new offshore.
Yeah, but what about onshore?
And we've got ongoing work in that area. Look, over time, we do need to phase out our use of fossil fuels if we're serious about climate and stopping these events.
But it's madness. This is madness.
Well, it would be
We're
madness
importing all this coal out of Indonesia because we can't actually dig it here because of you guys and your silly rules. And the fact is that at the time when there is an energy deficit in the world, yes, we are a very renewable, but we're not actually helping anybody by trucking in or shipping in coal out of Indonesia rather than using New Zealand coal.
And we mainly had to do that, Judith, as you know, because we had a particularly dry year last year. But most of the time our energy production is 90% renewable or more. This is the difference here. This stuff you can't do overnight, but whether it's across energy, transport, industrial production, we've got policies in place which are reducing emissions. The National Party opposes every single one of them.
Actually, the last time it was 86% renewable was when I was the minister. Since then, it's been about 60 to 70% since.
All right, we'll leave that there. E-bikes, subsidising e-bikes, probably not at the moment.
No, we've got a targeted scheme in place called the Clean Car Upgrade, where we're going to support people to get out of dirtier vehicles
I asked you about e-bikes.
into cleaner vehicles. But there'll be an option within that if people want to put some of that towards an e-bike. So we are all public transport, but we'll give people that choice.
So so the discount you get, like if you buy a Tesla or whatever it is, you can, instead of buying a car, you might be able to use a subsidy to buy an e-bike.
So this isn't the main clean car discount that we have in place. It's the upgrade scheme. The trial will be kicking off from April of that scheme, and it'll be more focused and really pitched at people on lower to middle incomes who might have a dirtier vehicle. They want to shift to a cleaner vehicle, maybe a hybrid or something, but they will also be able to use it in that way if that's what they want.
All right, so the bike could happen. Okay, let's move to the Ministry for the Environment, and I want to repeat the Ministry for the Environment and their bill that they have spent on domestic and international travel from January to November was $1 million, almost $1 million. Minister, the Ministry for the Environment?
Well, look, any government ministry will need to keep in touch with agencies and organisations overseas. That's not unusual.
We've got like phones and Zoom and stuff.
Under any government. And look, for example, I got the stats through for my Waka Kotahi, which I'm responsible recently, and they've made a concerted shift down in terms of their travel over the last few years.
Judith,
and we've seen that across quite a few government departments.
Some of it will be utterly legitimate and needed.
Yeah.
But it does sort of ring something like James Shaw as Climate Change Minister spending the most amount of money on overseas travel, doesn't it?
So the interesting thing for me was the amount spent on public transport versus taxis, shuttles and Ubers. Because remember, this is the Ministry for the Environment, and this is a government that says to big business and to us, reduce your emissions, take public transport where you can, all that kind of stuff. In that same period, according to an OIA by Mark Quinlivan here at Newshub, in that same period, guess how much they spent on public transport versus taxis, shuttles and Ubers? $250 on public transport and $97,000 on taxis, shuttles and Ubers. Does it not just scream hypocrisy to you?
Well, it was a slightly weird way of presenting it because, of course, the way that most people working in a ministry will engage in public transport will be to use public transport to get to and from work, which the ministry itself won't spend the money on. That'll generally be
what about meetings?
Yeah.
What about going to meetings? I mean, it either says public transport's really cheap and $250 got you a lot of trips, or it's saying that actually it's really inconvenient.
Yeah, the bigger picture here is that across the broader public sector, we've got a program of reducing emissions, and that's on track, and it's removed the equivalent of around about 21,000 vehicles off the road in terms of the emissions that it's reduced. There's more work to do, and I think we should be pressing. Pressing public entities to use more public transport.
It's a lot easier to run TV ads and other ads telling people what they should do rather than actually follow the advice themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to look at your guys' results. So I asked our producers this morning to give me your travel, air travel, and it'll be different because you're a minister, obviously, so it's different.
And I'm a very busy MP.
You're a busy MP, but I haven't actually seen this yet. But this, I think, is September to September, so it's a year. So let's take a look at what we've spent, what we've clocked up here.
I would expect so.
Oh, that's only domestic for you. Michael, have you been overseas much?
What period's that in?
This is, I think, September to September last year. So this is the year to September last year.
I think I probably had one overseas engagement in that time.
Oh, yeah? So over the space of a year, 20 grand, $13,000.
Well, that's what a busy minister will have to do. Right. Because not only do back and forth from Auckland to Wellington, but actually going all over the country. So I presume Michael wasn't using his e-bike to go down to Hawke's Bay and come back.
No.
I mean, the fact is you have to be realistic. And of course, he could just stay home and do nothing. And people would say, oh, gosh, he's got his travel down. But that's actually not going to help anyone, is it?
No, true.
And
true, but
I agree with that.
I think the issue that people have is that, you know, there are families who feel guilty getting on a plane because the message is, you know, it's adding to climate change. And then yet we have people who are, in, as you say, perfectly legitimate reasons for travel, but you are using planes, you know?
Yeah, we do. We do sometimes. We have to do our jobs, as many people do, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel guilty for that. But if we give people more choices, then they've got the ability to travel in other ways. So because of where I live, my offices, a lot of my work in the central city, I actually quite often bus around when I'm in Auckland.
Oh, that's
and that's because I've got those choices in place, and what we're trying to do is give more people more of those choices to travel in a low carbon way.
Fair enough. Good to see you both. Thanks
too.
for coming in for our Friday panel this morning. At 19 after 7, it's Labour Minister Michael Wood and Nationals' Judith Collins.